Empathy versus sympathy. What are they and how do they differ? Well, it all comes down to compassion and connection. Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Reicheter, and today I'm joined by mental health first aid master instructor and resilience, well-being, and social and emotional intelligence coach, Bill Carson. In this episode, we embark on a journey into the heart of human connection. We'll learn what empathy is and how we can be better at showing kindness and understanding to others. Join us as we explore the art of understanding and practicing empathy, forging stronger bonds with those around us, and fostering a more empathetic world. Bill, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited for our conversation, but before we begin, I just want to check in with you. How are you really?
I am good. It's interesting that you add the really. But yeah, I am good. I'm excited to be having this conversation with you, Fran, because it's a topic that I'm very passionate about.
I'm really passionate about it too because we're going to talk about sympathy and empathy today for anyone listening. And
Mm.
I didn't know that there was a difference for a very long time. And I didn't realize that showing sympathy and showing empathy are very different in the way someone receives us understanding them versus us just kind of pitying them or sitting there alongside them can be very different in the way that they feel and the way that they trust us and want to explore how they're feeling. So I'm really excited because as I've learned the difference, it's really helped me be a better friend, a better listener, hopefully one day a better therapist. But for those who don't know the difference, would you mind telling us a little bit about what sympathy is versus what empathy is?
Mm. Yes, it's a really important topic, and so I probably will bring a slightly different insight to it, which I think is incredibly valuable. And just to put some context, it's informed by, for me, over 650 hours of Lifeline volunteer telephone crisis support work, which is a counselling kind of role and function for people who are in crisis, along with a large number of mental health first aid workshops that I run, and a lot of training in coaching and in resilience and emotional intelligence and things like that. So empathy, the way I describe it and create the differences, empathy is about them. So think of thempathy, and sympathy is about self-pathy. Now, here's a really important distinction. Let's say, for example, the classic sympathy would be, and I was talking with a friend of mine the other day about this, and she said, sympathy just reminds me of death, because every time, if we normally do a sympathy or a sympathy card, for example, it'll be, I'm sorry for your loss, for example. Now, the really important distinction there with the I of when we make sympathy an I statement is that we have to be really mindful and careful that what's happening is, let's say, for example, you might share with me, Fran, that, just in the case of your grandmother, having a fall. Now, what'll happen for us as human beings is that generally for most people, we're emotionally connected. And so I would, sense and feel for your concern about that, because you love your grandmother and concerned about her. So I will have those feelings. And then if with sympathy, I have the feelings, and then I do an I statement, which then projects back to you my feelings about that. Mm. And that's really risky, because essentially sympathy in that context as an I projection essentially is, putting my feelings towards you, as distinct from, and this is the incredible subtlety around this, that if, okay, I notice that I feel that way, but what I do is I just settle my own feelings down, and then I direct back to you and I ask the question, and how are you feeling?
Yeah.
And so instead of me saying, I'm sorry that happened to your grandmother, and then therefore there's no connection to you because essentially I've made it an I statement. If I do empathy, which is I settle my own feelings down, it's not a self-empathy thing, then it's about you. And then I'd reflect, how are you feeling, Fran? And that must have been very concerning for you to have had that experience with your grandmother. So the conversation then stays about you and not about me kicking into my feelings. Does this make sense?
It does. And it's so important because I don't know if you can relate to this, but for me, I really hate when like something, I don't, hate's a strong word. I very much dislike when I share an experience and people are like, oh, I'm sorry that happened. And then that's it. Because your response usually to I'm sorry is it's okay. But like, no, it's not okay. Like right now, it's not okay. And I need to feel validated or supported or that I'm not alone in it. So I don't want to have to respond, it's okay, and comfort you when I'm not feeling okay. I want someone to say, that must have been really scary. How are you feeling? Is there anything I can do to support you? What do you need right now? How are you supporting yourself? What can I do? I want something that's more, I'm here for you, not that sucks. Sorry. And then I have to be like, oh, it's okay. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so one of the really important themes that I make around this is that it creates emotional safety for you if, with that example that you just shared, where and this is such a trap for so many people because we've all, had the experience where our friends and others have the emotional intelligence of a gnat. You would say something like, yeah, look, I'm really concerned, about, my studies at the moment and, the pressures that I'm under. And then so good practice would be, yeah, that must be pretty tough for you. And like, how are you organizing things? What support are you getting? So it's a gentle you conversation versus, oh, I know I'm under so much pressure myself, and and then it just suddenly becomes all about me. And the fact that you shared is just dropped into this black hole of I don't care.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that people sometimes want to respond with their own experience to like normalize, like, hey, I get this too. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing. But there's a way that we can add that empathy piece into it, right? So it's like, I'm, I've been really stressed out too. And something that's helped me is taking a break. Have you found anything to help you? What's been helping you? Or how are you coping with this, right? So redirecting it into what's helping you? How can I support you? Here's something that's helped me, but not saying, and now it's about me. I'm stressed too. Come ask me why I'm stressed instead of you opened up to me. I felt it too. I hope I can be here for you. And I think that's the thing is how can I use my own experience, my own, what I've learned, or just my own attention and presence to support you? Because when you open up, like you matter and you should feel like people are there for you and not like
Mm.
you have to hide away and let them have all the space. Like you deserve space too.
Yeah, exactly. Probably the thing I'd just reflect back and create some distinctions around that, Fran, is that one of the things I really encourage and suggest that is that we give space to the eyepiece, meaning that give the attention. So the empathy is the thempathy, and the pathy comes from the Greek word for feelings. So it's the them feelings versus the self feelings, sympathy feelings. So by first of all being, noticing that we'll have a response, okay, settle down, reflect, be present with the other person, be present with your feelings, notice those feelings, and then just say, and how are you going, and what sort of resources you accessing, etc., etc., and probably give a little bit more space to, what are you doing? How are you sort of looking after yourself? Giving space to that first, the you first, before coming in too early with the I. So it's when we want to, and this is the challenge, because quite a lot of people kind of want to help, and they because they see there's a challenge there, and they see, in a sense, the invitation for helping, because the person has essentially opened up and made a statement about the way they're feeling. And so in theory, it can be perceived as, this is an invitation for you to tell me how to fix my problem. But it's not. It's the invitation in that I'm sharing how I'm feeling. And to your point, by doing the empathy, by reflecting back their feelings and staying present with their feelings, that's where the person, the other person, will feel heard and listened and validated for their feelings. And that's the really powerful thing here, is the validation of our feelings. And rather than when someone tells us what to do or gives us their experience, in a sense, there's an implied invalidation of those feelings. Does that make sense?
That does. It honestly almost feels like sometimes our feelings are being minimized when someone jumps in straight
Exactly.
to I. It's like, I just want to feel validated, like my experiences are okay, that it's okay to feel this way, that maybe I'm not the only one that feels this way, but this is a very real feeling that I have, and it's okay that it exists. And I know I've kind of learned that I had to teach empathy to my dad, for example, because when I wanted to talk to him about something, he loves me so much that he wants to fix everything, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's what, I guess that's a dad thing, maybe. I don't know. But for my dad, that's a thing. He wants to fix everything for me because he loves me. So when I'm sad, he wants to tell me what to do to not be sad anymore, which in theory is so great. But I've learned that I have to say to him, I know you want to help me, but right now what I need is for you to just validate how I'm feeling. I will get to solutions after. You can totally help me with solutions after, or I'll figure it out on my own, whichever way it happens. But right now, I just need to know that how I'm feeling is normal and it's okay, and that I'm allowed to feel this way. Because right now, I feel, when it's in your head, I think, for me at least, when it's in my head, it's like, I'm crazy for feeling this way. Something's wrong with me for feeling this way, when I just need someone to validate and be like, no, it makes sense that you feel this way. You're going through a lot. There's a lot happening. That's okay. I'm here for you. Instead of, here's what you can do. Stop being sad. Think positive. Think sad. Hopeful.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so there's, in a sense, there's like a formula here, or a way of just creating an understanding of what those components would be. So in a sense, so because it's so not untypical, so many people, your dad's just is so typical of both a lot of males and a lot of parents, and people in general, really, of wanting to solve the problem, and then share from their own experience and so forth. So essentially, the distinction here is give it space. So the distinction between the empathy and the sympathy is give them feelings. So allow essentially the person to have their feelings, because often what we are doing is the other person is having their feelings, we're feeling it as well, and then we want to fix it. We want to solve the problem. We want to actually take away those feelings. And so this is a distinction there between, so with empathy, there's 3 levels of empathy. So empathy has cognitive, so the lowest level of empathy is cognitive empathy. So it is, let's say, so quite some time ago on Australian television, there was a program about refugees coming from war-torn countries to Australia to settle. And so cognitively, I could, empathize with, how difficult that would be. I haven't had the experience, so I didn't necessarily go into the feelings of the experience. Of empathy. The next level of empathy is emotional empathy, and this is where we will have the feelings of what the other person is experiencing. So, if we go back to the example where you had the situation with your grandmother, I can imagine, and I would have some feelings and notice what it would be like if, someone that I cared about, had an accident, an incident, and they were hurt. So I can have those. So I can have that emotional empathy. The highest level of empathy is compassionate empathy. And this is, so when you think about the Latin origins of the word, com is with and passion is pain, is when we do compassion, we're actually connecting with the person's feelings, their pain. And often if we're unconscious of noticing the experience in our own bodies, what'll happen is it fires up our stress reaction. And there are people then whose default stress reaction is to essentially externalize, and they will then project and tell the other person what to do. And then there are people who internalize and fundamentally, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, and they shame themselves, and they'll project out of that as well. So if you don't have that self-awareness around the impact that the feelings are having, then you just project. But if you have the self-awareness, you settle it down, you notice the feelings, you stay with the feelings, you stay present, because that's what we do when we're doing compassionate empathy. We're staying with the feelings, and then reflecting them back. So being present, so that's creating some validation of your feelings, and then the conversation can flow. So I'd be exploring with you, what sort of resources do you have to look after yourself? So it's a sense of curiosity. So I'm being present with you, I'm being curious with you about your ability to handle your situation. And then as the conversation continues a little further, it becomes evident that maybe me sharing of my how I've been through the experience might be valuable. You see the distinction here, that the sharing of my own personal experience, I have to kind of just give space to really sort of see whether that would be useful to be helpful, or whether you've got enough resources, you're working on enough things yourself that you're good to go and look after yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, absolutely. And that's the thing. If we go straight to me, this is what helped me, this is how I can help you, it doesn't give the person a chance to, first of all, process and reflect on what resources they do have, right? Or how they're really feeling and what support they're looking for. Sometimes we need to give people a chance, because you know what? They could have just needed a space to vent. Someone may just need a space to vent. Someone may need help finding resources. Someone may need help processing what's in their brain so they can see what's available to them. What they need may not be your solution, or it may actually be your solution, but you don't know if you don't give them a chance to express and explore. And that's key, right? It's giving people a space. But going back to self-awareness, because I didn't realize how important it is to check in with how you're feeling before you respond to somebody, until I noticed that someone would say something to me and I would respond so quick out of maybe a frustration, because a similar experience happened to me and I was frustrated by it. I was like, oh, it's this person and this, and they can't be trusted. And it's like, well, that's not their reality. It might be, totally might be their reality. It might also not be their reality. So by me projecting my own experience, I could be making someone feel angry towards something that maybe they don't need to be. I could
Mm,
make them feel like this person just doesn't understand and they're looking to place blame. This person is focused on them and not me. So by checking in with how I'm feeling before I respond is key to see, am I going to project my own feelings onto them or my own fears and shame? Because if you are, it's not helpful to them.
mm.
Like
Yes,
it's not.
exactly right. It's so true. Yeah, you've got really good self-awareness and insight around this, friend. That's very, very good.
Thank
Mm,
you. I'm
mm,
learning.
mm. Yes, it's very good. Um, because just imagine how many issues, not only, just in the interpersonal relationship there, and then in groups of people, and then in whole countries. I mean, there's madness happening in your country, there's madness happening in ours, because people just go into reaction
Yeah.
straight away, and they fire up their stress reaction, and they'll either go into attack, externalize, or they internalize. How could you do this as a terrible thing? How could you think so? That without settle down, give some space, reflect back feelings, be present, create some validation of feelings, and understand what the kind of landscape is in this space between us in terms of what you're thinking and feeling and how I relate to that, and then explore what a solution might look like.
Yes,
Pretty sophisticated.
exactly. So much
Now,
needs to happen before we have a solution. And validating is key. I cannot express that enough because,
mm,
again, a lot of times in our heads, we may feel like I don't deserve to feel this way. What's wrong with me for feeling this
mm,
way? And just that
yeah,
validation can change everything. It can get rid of a lot of shame. It can get
that's
rid of
right.
this thing that's blocking you from looking for a solution because I don't need a solution. I need to just get over this, right? That's something we tend to think, right? And it's like, maybe you don't need a solution. Maybe you just need time to process. Absolutely. Maybe you do need to make a step towards something, whether that step is setting a boundary, learning a new skill, reaching out for support, whatever that step you may need to take is out there. Absolutely. But
Mm,
if you feel ashamed for feeling that way, you're likely to not take the step because you're arguing with yourself on whether or not it's right to feel this way.
yeah, exactly. It's also really interesting, and it sort of seems like it's counterintuitive. Um, but what's there's been some research that's starting to really identify that what happens when we create this, I kind of just use the metaphor of a platform of presence and validation. So you're expressing your feelings, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just being present with how you're feeling and how you're resourcing your way through that. And what happens when we create this safe space between us with compassion and so forth. One of the themes around the research is identifying that what happens for, let's say, if I was talking with you, it enables you to start kind of accessing more of your kind of right hemispheres, some kind of vagus nerve soothing. So there's this parasympathetic kind of nervous system settling, and so it actually provides, in a sense, vicariously, a capacity for you, the other person, to soothe and to actually become more functional in their brain so that they can kind of have more capacity to actually solve their own problem. And so in a sense, it's like, it's for all of us to learn, I think, that distinction between the empathy is about the other person, and that, in a sense, the trust and the capacity that that other person can have the feelings that they're having. It's not freak out stuff because they're feeling the way they are. We don't have to then rescue them because of their feelings. Just be present with their feelings, validate their feelings, and allow the person to, in a sense, work through their own feelings. So I'll give you the example of what this is like. So imagine, 2 or 3 year old child falls over, hurts itself, maybe just the shock of it, or actually does hurt themselves. Now, as we all would probably know, one of the best things you could possibly do is just, caregiver, parent, uncle, auntie, cousin, brother, sister, whatever the case may be, is just pick up that child and hold the child. And what will happen is that they will soothe, they'll self-regulate, and then they'll kind of integrate emotionally, etc. And then they'll go, okay, I'm good now, mummy, good now, daddy, and off they go. And you know what I mean? It's like that would happen. And so, in a sense, when when we're creating that safe platform for someone to feel heard, validated, that hold a reciprocal of safety for them to, feel safe with another human being, then this a similar sort of soothing will take place. Does it make sense?
It does. And I've never thought about it like that. But it
Mm,
is really interesting, right? If you just hold space for that person, right? If you're just there and give
mm.
them a chance to soothe and just relax and breathe and catch their breath again. But if you go straight to like survival mode with the child and you start panicking while they're panicking,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
gonna make it worse. It's gonna make it
Exactly.
worse. I don't know much about babies, but I know that. So it's
Yeah.
really important to just hold space for someone to be there, to let them know that they're not alone. But again, not panic, not react right away, just be there. Being there really makes all the difference. And I don't know why we always want to jump into rescue mode. Sometimes the best way to rescue somebody is by just being in the boat with them so they're not in it alone.
Yeah, I think my understanding around the why, to some degree, it happens is is because people are not having the self-awareness around their stress reaction. So I know a particular individual who, with that same in a situation of a young child falling over, um, seeing that triggered his stress reaction. He had an externalizing stress reaction, and I saw it on more than one occasion. He would say and kind of yell, "What you do that for, you bloody idiot," to the kid. And like, the kid's just hurt himself. Why would you speak like that? And but fundamentally, he was a really loving man. But the stress reaction of seeing someone that he loved, his own child, get hurt, fired off that stress and that habituated externalizing style in his case. Now, other people who have an internalizing style where they blame themselves, so the externalizers, they blame the other. What you do that for, you buddy? The internalizers then go into, oh, I'm a bad mother, and they go, oh, look, I'm so sorry, how could I have done this to you? And that's totally dysfunctional as well. So it's having the awareness around our triggered emotional reaction and being in that moment, being able to make the correct choice, settle it down, be present, and just be present with the child, not, you know, shaming yourself all over them or getting angry with them and things like that. So I personally have this belief that one of the most incredibly important evolutionary things that all of us as human beings need to do is to be able to kind of be far more aware of our stress reaction and then have more self-control over our stress reaction. So we make better decisions. It's what I call getting out of the stress state, finding our C space. So you make a choice, you exercise courage or compassion or curiosity or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that awareness is everything. The way we respond is so important's not even a strong enough word. It's crucial. The way we respond can change everything. It can
Mm,
change the way if somebody feels safe and secure, or if somebody feels like they're the problem,
or somebody feels like they're stressing somebody else out and making it worse for someone else, right? Because then we have the, I'm a burden, I don't deserve to open up, I'm causing problems for other people, or I'm the problem, something's wrong with me, I need to just figure it out myself. When hopefully people will get to a place where they feel, oh, I'm supported, what I'm feeling is normal and it's okay, and I deserve to feel better. I deserve to feel better. And I'm going to reach out to my network. I'm going to find some resources that work for me. But it's really hard to get there if everyone around us is like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I made you feel that way. I can't believe I let you down. I'm so terrible. Or what's wrong with you? Why do you feel that way? You're so terrible. It's really difficult. I mean, it might not be impossible, but it is very difficult to hear those responses and then be like, I deserve to feel supported, when the messaging is making you not feel that way.
Yeah, it's so true. You see, one of the things that I think as humans we need to really mature, and this is whole context of feelings, because we get so freaked out by feelings, and we're so freaked out by feelings that we can't even sort of necessarily talk that much about emotion. So the distinction between feelings and emotions generally is that we'll have feelings and then we apply some kind of thinking to it, and then it becomes an emotion. Because a situation can happen, like either you could say something or something could happen, and I might get the feeling, and I can make then the decision in a sense of how am I going to react to that. So I might just settle down and that'll just pass, or I might get angry or shamed or something like that. And if we kind of look at just a lot of the work that I do is in mental health. I mean, who ever has a thought without feelings, or has feelings without thoughts? So we just call it mental, and we don't even include emotional. We got this whole category over here called emotional intelligence, and then you got mental health and mental fitness, and that they're separated. They need to be together, mental and emotional. That's what we do. We have moods all day long.
Yeah. That's so true. Everything brings up some kind of feeling. So being aware of what those feelings are and how they may be influencing how we show up for others, how we show up for ourselves. It's important to have empathy for ourselves too, and to support ourselves. So checking in with how you're feeling. That how are you really question, directed at yourself sometimes. Check in with yourself, because if you're not feeling great, it's so hard to show up for other people, right? Because you need someone to show up for you. So you can reach out for help too. You also deserve to feel supported, but you don't have to take away someone else's I'm looking for support by pushing yours out there. So if you need support, reach out for support instead of waiting till somebody else reaches out and then be like, well, I feel this way too. Mine is so much worse. I need this. Hold space for others and request space for yourself separately.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the themes also we're going to touch on was the whole idea of preventing burnout, and around showing empathy for others. So one of the themes, coming back to what you were touching on before, I think one of the really important self-awareness things that we need that's really helpful is in any moment, just noticing what I call the 3 levels of energy. Am I feeling energized? Am I feeling empty? Or am I feeling exhausted? Now, burnout is fundamentally an exhaustion thing, both physical and emotional. So the typical kind of, I'm burned out at work kind of thing is both overworking, for a whole raft of reasons, physically, but also not getting our needs met and getting often exhausted emotionally. So not having a say in things and so forth. So if you kind of take that scale, energized, empty, and exhausted, And if you kind of think about, with a car can go down to empty, but there's still, because they know what we're like, and it's like, oh, it's empty. Some people freak out and they'll fill it up straight away, but some people kind of know, oh, I've got about another 40 Ks left before it gets really exhausted. So some people are not recognizing in themselves when they're starting to get empty, and then therefore looking after themselves. Now, there's a whole, organizationally, this is quite fascinating, because there's essentially three players in this whole burnout thing in an organization. There's the organization itself, putting pressure, just having its needs, its business pressures, and so forth. It then flows down, let's say, to the various managers, then so the manager, and then the individual themselves. Now, that's if you're kind of working in that kind of hierarchical kind of business environment. Me personally, I have my own business, so I'm essentially, accountable to myself. But I think the fundamental piece here is that each individual needs to be fundamentally aware of and take personal responsibility for their own energy levels, so that if they're not feeling energized for a whole raft of reasons, and they're actually hitting empty, you need to notice that I'm feeling empty. Now, that could be either through the day, because I've just spent the last hour and a half just really working on a project. It's like, okay, stop, take a break. But if you don't do that, and if you're feeling on empty, and then you go, oh, I've got to go to another meeting, and then you sit through another meeting, and then you go to another meeting after that, if you're not looking after yourself fundamentally, and maybe, a lot of people are now doing this, is stop the meetings 10 minutes before. You don't need to go to the hour. Stop the meeting 10 minutes before. Go move your body. Go grab a cup of tea or coffee. Go have a chat. Maybe, do something that changes your whole energy state. Be conscious of your energy. Get it back up. Get enthused again. If maybe you had a difficult, meeting, be just conscious of the whole energy flow throughout the day. And then if it starts to get depleted, and then if you have a really solid day and you're pretty on empty towards the end of the day, be very mindful then of finding something to get your energy back up again. So when you go home, you don't come home exhausted and get angry or depleted and kick the cat and all that kind of stuff. You got to change your energy state again to be a present and pleasant human being. How does that resonate for you, Fran?
Burnout is something that's so important, and it's something I'm learning that I'm bad at, because I, just like I do with my car, wait till I am completely empty. The other day I was driving and my car had like 10 miles, and I was like, should I stop for gas now? I think I can make it a little bit longer. And that was just purely me not wanting to have to get out of the car and pump gas.
Have you run out of petrol?
I have made it on 0 miles just into the gas station. Wow. You can feel it start to stall. Done that. And I do that with myself too. So at least I'm consistent. No, but the important piece is I wait until I am completely burnt out and super sick and not feeling well and dealing with these migraines, not having energy to get out of bed, to be like, oh, I need some rest. When, like you said, paying attention to my energy throughout the day. If I notice, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now, I need to take a break and go for a walk. I need to get away from the computer screen. I can't handle talking to anyone right now. I need to take a few deep breaths and do something else and then come back so I can be productive. But if you don't check in with yourself and you wait till you have nothing left in your tank and you're barely pulling into the gas station, it's a lot more difficult. It costs a lot more money to fill up your car when there's nothing in it. It takes a lot more when there's nothing in it than if you have a little bit left in your tank and you're starting to refuel it early.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing to think about for us as humans is that there's generally recognized as four sections in our energy tank. So if you can kind of think of it vertically. So there's our physical energy, so how we look after ourselves, the kind of things we were just talking about. There's our emotional energy, That's really important. That will be things like, so we increase our emotional energy when we do things like, gratitude and, being mindful of positive thinking and, dealing with letting go of negative and destructive thoughts and the social relationships that are a really important part of emotional. Mental is when our mental energy is just focusing on our goals and doing the work we need to do. And, for you, getting the podcasts organized and editing and all of that kind of work. And then the really important component, another component is, you could call it spiritual, or in another context, it can be called purposeful. So what's one's purpose and meaning? And so that's really important because, for you personally, I'm just kind of gathering this from what I've seen, inspiring my generation is, you've got a really strong purpose, a really strong kind of core sense of identity and contribution and just a drive that comes from that. And that's huge, hugely valuable, because when people are in jobs and work where they don't have a sense of an alignment to their own values and their contribution. And even in, jobs that can be pretty seemingly sort of pretty basic, like let's say you just, I don't have a point of view around this, but let's say you're working in the retail industry and let's say, in a supermarket and, you're doing, stocking vegetables all the time and stuff like that. You can do that with love. Or you can do it with like hatred, I hate this bloody job and I hate all the stupid people, or you can do it with love. You can do it with a sense of, contribution, of caring about others, making sure you set it up properly, making sure you sort of got a good energy, people are coming in and you care about people, so that your core purpose there is, I care about other human beings. That's the reason why I get out of bed. So it doesn't matter what you do, it's because I care about other human beings. And as a sense of purpose. So you don't need a purpose like, I'm going to change the world, but just show up each day in a caring and loving way. And I think that makes a huge difference.
It does. When you have a sense of purpose, it makes it a lot more exciting, right? Like you enjoy doing it. It takes away, I don't want to say it gets rid of the stress, by no means. I'm a very stressed out person. However, it does make it more exciting to want to do the work, even when it feels stressed. And it also makes me want to feel good when I do the work, because I'm excited to do the work. So I want to do my best. So when I need to take a break, learning that it's okay to take a break. It's okay to take that break so I come back to my work feeling excited because I'm so passionate about what I get to do. Exactly. Does it prevent burnout? No, there's so many other things we need to do and take care of. But it really does help with feeling accomplished, feeling like I'm contributing, not feeling like I'm stuck. So I think that it's so important when we're looking at how to take care of ourselves, how to support ourselves, finding that sense of purpose, finding our why, what makes us excited, because when you get that piece, then you kind of see yourself as a little bit more worthy, right? And then you want to take care of yourself because you want to see what you can accomplish and how you can make an impact, whether that is by stocking the shelves so that people don't go hungry, or it's being the CEO of the food bank that's giving people food, right? No matter what your job is, if you feel a sense of purpose and accomplishment, it makes it a little bit more exciting to want to be there and show up for yourself, and make you recognize like, hey, I need a break so I can show up tomorrow and do this even better.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So just the other thing too that is important, because we were talking here about how to prevent burnout while showing empathy for others. And so coming back to my point around the highest form of empathy is compassionate empathy. So when we're being really present with another person, so the thing that here to be really mindful of, and so for example, with me, when I'm doing Lifeline, and then I'm spending a good chunk of time with another human being who's really in pain, then that's definitely compassionate empathy. So what we have to do, even when with someone that we care about. So like if you go back to your situation with, say, someone very close, your grandmother or whatever, if you're doing the compassionate empathy and then you're creating that, that validation and that place of safety, and you're going to feel it. So those feelings, you have to be kind of really mindful of, what we do with those feelings, because they'll stay there. So again, not, projecting them and offloading them onto the other. But then if the conversation ends, then you'll have the feelings. Now, sometimes they're only low level feelings and you can just kind of like, they'll just go and you can just, trottle off and do whatever you need to do. But if there's some lingering feelings, then just be mindful of that, validate that, just change the energy in some shape or form. It might be to go for a walk, get some nature energy. Maybe you can't do that straight away, then plan to do it, at some point, sooner rather than later. But then if there's some bigger feelings that are lingering as well, then it can be really important to then connect into someone of a higher capability. So in a work context, that would be where I encourage people that say to talk to their employee assistance provider. If they've got these lingering feelings and they, things that they're concerned about, so that they can, get that help and support. Because for me in Lifeline, if I have a lot of strong lingering feelings and, did I really handle that call in most effective way, then at the end of the call, I can put the headset down and I can go into the next room and I talk to the supervisor. So I debrief with the supervisor. And I found that this is incredibly important, because what has happened for me is that I've learned and I've become emotionally stronger and it's emotionally fitter and able to handle more complex situations. And I think this is a potential for all of us as human beings to become emotionally fitter and stronger when we are validated around our feelings and when we can work them through and heal them in any way, shape or form.
Absolutely. Emotional resilience is so important. And that starts with recognizing how we're feeling, acknowledging it, and being willing to work through it, right? It's so easy when you hear something very sad or very difficult happen and you feel it, right? And then you just stick with those feelings. How many times do you turn on the news and you see something sad and that's all you can think about all day? Right?
Yeah.
That's totally a normal thing that we do. Sad news is sad, right? It's something that's sad. We're meant to feel it. We're humans. We feel. It's what we do.
Exactly.
However, it's so important that we work through those feelings, because when you're hearing, if you open social media, you've probably heard 10 bad things that happened in the day today. And that might be within the last hour, right? That's a lot of information that's going to impact how you're feeling. Like you said in the beginning, if you have a thought, you have a feeling. They just go together. So it's so important that we take care of how we're feeling, because we're hearing it all day and we're not taking care of ourselves. We're just naturally burnt out on information alone and our feelings to it, right? Like we deserve to feel supported, right? That's the overarching message. You deserve to feel supported, checking in with yourself, seeing how you're feeling, so that you can be there not just for yourself, but for others. With my grandma, for example, in the beginning, there was a lot of days of me just by the end of the day, tears flowing down my face, laying in bed, couldn't sleep. I was like, it's a lot. And then I didn't want to get up and get out of bed. I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to do anything. Burnout. But when I learned that, okay, how am I feeling? How is this making me feel? Why am I feeling this way? What's something I can do to encourage myself to get through it? What's a more positive way I can look at this experience? Maybe she fell and we ended up at the hospital, but we got to the hospital, we got her some treatment, we got support, we got her checked out, and she wasn't alone in it, right? So changing the way I'm looking at it and adding in that she wasn't alone. I was there. That made me feel good, instead of, oh no, this happened, I failed. Going back to how we see it. It's so important to check in with how you're feeling and showing yourself some support in whatever way that looks for you. It might be different for you than me. For me, it's a lot of thought reframing, because when I change a bit about the thought, I change how I feel about the thought. That helps me a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good strategy. It's so important. And what's really interesting, and I'm aware that we need to wrap up shortly. One of the really important aspects of the whole theme of reframing, so people don't know, it's this concept of, putting a different frame around something. I tend to kind of use languaging to reappraise, re-look at. On the one hand, it can sort of be seen as very Pollyanna-ish, you're just putting a Band-Aid on something. Like the reality is it's just bad, and you're just trying to put a little Band-Aid on it. But the other aspect is that there's this a lot of science now that's really highlighting that when we shift out of what I call stress states into more kind of right brain, more, settle down the parasympathetic nervous system, etc. When we access those more compassionate, curious, positive thoughts, we actually become more whole-brained rather than half-brained. And so no one ever solves a problem when they're stressed out. You've got to actually get out of that state to get a more expanded state. And so sometimes, that reappraisal, reframing, bringing different thoughts and feelings to the experience then brings a more expanded capacity to actually deal with what you're dealing with, not to put a Band-Aid on it, but to have greater capacity. Does that make sense?
It does, and I have to say, this is so silly, but I now understand the name reframing, because people say like, "Oh, your frame of thought." Never thought reframing is putting a new frame around it. Wow, that blew my mind. First of all, second of all, it's so important. The way we look at something can impact everything, and if we want to be there for someone else, we want to show support, we want to love someone else and make them feel loved, supported, validated. How we come into the conversation, how we show up matters. And sometimes it starts with us learning to reframe some of the thoughts that we're having. But Bill, you've been absolutely amazing. As we wrap up, can you tell everyone a little about you, your work, your book, where they can find you, where they can buy your book? Give us a quick how we can connect with you.
Fantastic. So my website is inspirelearning.au. And recently written a book which I'm really passionate about and really proud of, called Safe Conversations for Work and Life. So it's available on Amazon and Booktopia and places like that. So Safe Conversations for Work and Life. And essentially it's helping people to become aware of having this kind of skills that we've been talking about. SAFE is essentially an acronym for self-awareness and awareness of the other, acknowledging, asking, focusing on listening, and empowering. So there's a whole kind of structure and methodology underneath what we've been talking about. And available for workshops and keynotes and a whole range of things that I'm really passionate about. Helping people to emotionally regulate, get in a better state, and make a loving contribution to humanity. That's my goal every day.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.